Dihormati, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan, Sampurasun. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to El Royal Hotel Bandung for the event Enriching 2ndDraft of U20 2022 Communique seminar. And this seminar is about to empowering the role of urban-rural linkage towards integrated actions on localization of SDGs and climate goals at city region. Habis ini. Menunggu berapa lama lagi? Mohon maaf Bapak dan Ibu, sekali lagi saya haturkan ucapan selamat datang di seminar Penajaman Issues Notes Urban 20. Dan tentunya izinkan saya dalam kesempatan yang berbahagia ini untuk pertama-tama menyambut para tamu.
Recording in progress.
Para tamu undangan khusus yang telah hadir baik secara luring maupun secara daring. And allow me to firstly welcome the attendance of special invited guests. Yang terhormat Kepala Biro Pemerintahan dan Otonomi Daerah dari Setda Pemerintah Provinsi Jawa Barat, the Head of Government and Regional Autonomy Bureau from West Java Government, the Honorable President of Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners, yang kami hormati Presiden Ikatan Ahli Perencanaan Indonesia, the Honorable Sherpa DKI Jakarta, the Head of International Cooperation Division from the Government of DKI Jakarta, who presents online, the Honorable Director of Indonesia's Association of Cities Government, yang kami hormati Direktur Asosiasi Pemerintah Kota Seluruh Indonesia atau APEXI, yang juga hadir secara daring, the Honorable Executive Director of Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, Direktur Eksekutif Institut Strategi Lingkungan Global, also present online, the honorable speakers and moderators, yang kami hormati para pembicara dan moderator, juga seluruh partisipan Bapak dan Ibu para peserta yang kami hormati. Tentunya pertama-tama marilah kita panjatkan puji dan syukur atas kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, karena atas limpahan rahmat, taufik, serta hidayahnya lah kita semua dapat berkumpul dalam keadaan sehat walafiat, baik secara luring maupun secara daring pada hari Jumat berkah ini. Let us say grace to the God Almighty. It is because His continued blessing we are able to gather here both offline and online to participate in this event. And it is an honor for me, Agi Rahmawati, to be your host for today's event. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, for our first agenda for today's event, untuk mengawali acara kita pada siang hari ini, marilah kita bersama-sama mendengarkan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dipersilahkan untuk berdiri. Singing Indonesia's National Anthem, All Rise.
Di sanalah aku berdiri.
Hadirin dipersilakan untuk duduk kembali. Please be seated. Baik Bapak dan Ibu, hadirin yang kami hormati, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today's event is a good momentum to exchange the global urban issues between cities in Indonesia and other cities in other countries. This event aimed to key inputs to the second draft Communique as a follow-up the sharpening U20 issues note on March 2022. Bapak dan Ibu, hadirin yang kami hormati, acara pada hari ini adalah momentum yang baik untuk bertukar isu perkotaan global antara kota di Indonesia dan kota-kota di negara lainnya. Dan event pada hari ini bertujuan untuk menghasilkan masukan ke dalam draft kedua Communique sebagai tindak lanjut dari pertemuan di bulan Maret 2022. And today you will witness speakers from the globe and Indonesia sharing their research experiences and knowledge on urban-rural linkage. Dan hari ini Bapak dan Ibu akan menyaksikan dan terlibat langsung di dalam diskusi dengan mengajukan pertanyaan kepada para pembicara kita nanti yang akan hadir yang berasal dari dalam dan luar negeri tentunya. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, sebagai acara selanjutnya kita akan simak bersama sambutan yang akan disampaikan oleh Presiden Ikatan Ahli Perencanaan Indonesia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we will witness the welcoming remarks from the Honorable President of Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners. He is an urban planner who has more than 20 years of experience in research, consultancy, and advocacy in the field of sustainable urban development. He earned his Dr. Phil PhD in Development Studies from one of the leading research universities in Germany, the University of Bonn, in August 2015. Following completion of his doctoral studies, Mr. Simarmata has served as a lecturer at Urban Development Studies Postgraduate Program and Master Program of Urban and Regional Planning, Faculty of Engineering, Universitas Indonesia. He is also the principal and founder of the HAS Consulting and NUA advisory teams to assist government institutions, private companies, and communities build the sustainability pathway. And since November 2019, he has been serving as the president of Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners, and since May 2020, he has been selected as one of the ISOCARP Scientific Committee members. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Henricus Andi Simarmata.
Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests in the room and also in the virtual room through Zoom. My name is Andi Simarmata, the President of Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planner, who report this seminar event to U20 Sherpa and co-chairs of Government DKI Jakarta and Government of West Java Province. It is a proud privilege and occasion for us as the organization of profession in Indonesia to be able to report you this seminar and guide you in the opening session. Before I report to U20 Sherpa and all of you about this seminar, please allow me to send our gratitude to administration of Government of West Java Province, Pak Regional Secretary, Pak Iwan, who support us to facilitate this seminar. Although it is now a hard moment for West Java society and family who are still praying for Emeril Khan Mumtaz, the son of Governor Ridwan Kamil, who was lost in the River Bern City, Switzerland, last week. Therefore, let us take a moment to pause and honor Emils in our own way, in silence. Let us take a moment to pray and honor him. 3 seconds of silence, begin. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. Today, our seminar will aim to enrich the second draft of Communique. So this is a part of the continuous stage for Government of West Java and also DKI Jakarta Province to sharpen the issue notes of Urban 20. Regional Secretary of West Java Province, Bapak Setiawan, Assistant to Secretary of Jakarta Capital City Government, Ibu Sri Haryati, as the representative of co-chairs of Urban 20, Mr. Yasuo Takahashi, son, the Executive Director of IJES Japan, as our collaborator, and Mr. Alwis Rustam, the Executive Director of APEXI, who represent the Association of City and Government Indonesia, who join us, both of them, through virtual Zoom. Thank you very much for your time and to join me to this opening session. First of all, allow me to thank U20 Sherpa that allow our organization IAP to hold the seminar that aims to provide inputs for second draft of Urban 2022. This seminar prepared along with the Universitas of Indonesia, ZMT Artek Bremen, IJES Japan, and German Watch that have common understanding on the importance of having collaboration between urban and rural, between city and villages, in order to recover the pandemic crisis and climate crisis. As mentioned by G20 team, recover together, recover stronger, and the Urban 20 focus on post-pandemic city, we believe that in making cities recovered and sustainable, we need also to embrace the rural development. Therefore, we propose a theme on empowering the role of urban-rural linkage towards integrated action on localization of SDGs and climate goals at city region. This seminar will present 4 speakers from different kind of stakeholders. Dr. Bijon Mitra, the ISG Deputy Director of IJES, an international think tank that based in Japan. Martin Voss, the Policy Advisor of German Watch, an international NGO or CSO based in Bonn, Germany. Johannes Herbeck, the Blue Urban Project Coordinator from Artek Bremen University, a research institute that based in Bremen in Germany. And Prof. Yunita Winarto, UI professor who has long research on rural people and rural area. The conversation among them will be facilitated by Pak Bernardus Jonoputro, the immediate past president of IAP. Besides of open to public to get more inputs, we also invite various ministry and central agencies, central government agencies, Association of Local Governments, both APEXI and APKASI, professional organization of built environment, NGOs in Indonesia and government of West Java Province and its cities and regencies. We also expect other working groups, both working groups and engagement group that have also engaged in the G20 event, have also strong relation to this topic, attend to this seminar. We also invite UI experts that also get along with the Sherpa G20. So let me wrap up by saying that we can reinvigorate urban-rural linkage. Cities need to innovate. At the same time, cities need to reach out rural as the partners. We will need to re-engage and build trust among stakeholders. If we can pull together and generate renewed momentum in the areas such as development and climate change, we can reignite enthusiasm for and all it has to offer. I look forward to your help, your support, and your ideas. So before I hand over to the U20 Sherpa, please also welcome the IJES Executive Director, Mr. Yasuo Takahashi-san to share his opening remarks from IJ's perspective and reflect from IJ's activities that related to urban-rural development. Yasuo Takahashi-san, the floor is
Thank you very
yours.
much. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Honorable Chair, distinguished speakers, and ladies and gentlemen. Sorry.
Mr. Yasuo Takahashi-san, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm now here.
Yeah, please.
Can I start?
Yeah, we can hear you from here. And hopefully,
Okay, so
yeah.
thank you very much. Honorable Chair, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Yasuo Takahashi, Executive Director of Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, or IGES, located in Hama. I'd like to share my screen for a sort of presentation. So, we're very glad to be the part of the Urban 20 Community development processes by providing input to this important document that will provide local perspectives to the G20 negotiations. I'm very much pleased to share the regional circulating and ecological sphere concept, or regional CES concept, in this important seminar that aims to enriching second draft of U20 Communique by highlighting important role of urban-rural linkage perspective for priority sustainable development issues. As you know, there are several global agendas have been agreed by the global communities, including SDGs, Paris Agreement on Climate Change, Aichi Biodiversity Targets, a Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction in order to realize the transformative change. This important global agenda is integrated in the national development by integrating them in the important policy documents such as nationally determined contribution, a voluntary national review on SDGs, national biodiversity strategy and actions, and national disaster management plan, and so on. Integration of important national policies is critical to guide the real application of the policies at the ground. These global and national sustainable agendas need to be well synchronized with local needs and actions. It is important to take integrated approach to implement multiple number of sustainable development goals locally. When it is about the localization of the global and national agendas, urban or cities should be on the front line to act locally and regionally. As the home of more than 50% of work population, cities became as the center of demand of natural resources and accounts for major share to the environmental degradations. For example, cities share 70% of electricity consumptions and 75% of CO2 emission. Unsustainable consumptions at the demand side and unsustainable management of natural resources at the supply side together increase climate risk, disaster risk, and biodiversity loss, which lead to high urban vulnerability. In order to reduce risks, vulnerabilities, and to address sustainable development challenges, promoting partnerships and
Mr. Yasuo, I think you are in mute first.
sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so the regional CES concepts entails taking integrative approaches to environmental, economic, and social challenges through simultaneously making progress in decarbonization, resource circulation, living in harmony with nature. Regional CES aims to direct localities toward effectively using their natural resources for restructuring the socioeconomics of the region and contribute to global and national agendas. On top of this, the key to the regional CES is connecting urban and rural communities to realize a decentralized and self-reliant region and co-developing local regional programs to solve social and environmental issues. Regional CES intends to give solutions for common concern of urban and rural area through generating new value chains while complementing and supporting regional resources by building broader networks composed of natural connections, linkages among forests, rural areas, cities, rivers, and ocean in rural, and economic connections composed of expertise, human resources, financial capital by urban. Each locality will demonstrate its strengths by utilizing its unique characteristics. A self-reliant and decentralized society will be built where different resources are circulated within each region, and where there's symbiosis and exchange with neighboring regions according to unique characteristics, making use of the wide range of resources found in mountains, agriculture, and fishing villages, as well as in cities. Connecting people, goods, money, and skill is the key for successful application of the regional CS concept. Therefore, establishment of the regional CS platform is an important step for application of this concept that will strengthen partnership, exploring local businesses, and connecting finance with local initiatives. Consequently, optimum utilization of local resources is enhanced that lead to decentralized, self-reliant, and resilient society through integrated improvements on environment, economy, and society. The regional CES approach has received well attention in the policy making. For example, the regional CES approach has been integrated in the 5th Basic Environmental Plan of Japanese government and implemented this concept to address various sustainability challenges in Japan. Dr. Bijan Kumer Pichra will share a few examples of application of the regional CES approach and CES Asia initiative in his presentation during the panel discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much again, Mr. Yasuo Takahashi, for your opening remark. And I think you offer a conceptual foundation to bridge urban-rural linkage, through regional circulating and ecological spheres. And I think this is a good start for us to start discussion later on. And please also let me invite Mr. Alwis, the Executive Director of APEXI, to also share some thoughts from Indonesian cities related to these themes. Pa Alwis, are you with us now? So the time is yours.
Hello, Pak Andi.
Yeah.
Is it clear, my voice?
Yes, please go ahead, Pa Alwis.
Thank you, Pak Andi. Hello, everyone. Good day for all participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sampurasun. Selamat sore untuk semua. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me. I would like to take this limited time to make the relevant points for our discussion today. The status of 98 cities throughout Indonesia as member of the Association of Indonesian Municipalities, or in Indonesia acronym APEXI, Asosiasi Pemerintah Kota Seluruh Indonesia. I'm not really in the theoretical thing because in previous speaker opening already put it in the note, but I will try to contextualize our topic today. The status, in short, in a short time, I will describe some of challenges that realizing collaboration between urban and rural area based on the status of Indonesia context. I mean, IPEXI members. And the last part, I will emphasize several our opportunities, as recommendation for U20 forum as a voice to local as a voice from local government and communities, and part of highlight contribution to the presidency and member of the G20. The first is about the profile of APEXI members. In fact, that internally, 98 cities as a member of APEXI in themselves have disparities and gap. These disparities and gaps, not about the fiscal capacity, population, maturity, disaster, even disaster hazards, I mean, and the geographic obstacles, and resources, etc., etc. Also, fact that, in fact, in some of APEXI member cities, especially in the category of small city groups, in several regions, such as in regional 5 and 6, just for info, we have 6 regional commissariats in all of 98 cities in Indonesia. Both secretaries 5 and 7 also have their own rural area. So even in Kupang city, for example, there is, and other cities, in the regional 3, for example, some of those rural areas are separated by islands in their sub-district and the sub-district even. Some of challenge, problem, or obstacles absolutely the same with rural in most regions. On the other hand, 33 members of APEXI, our association, are provincial capitals, and 5 member cities are administrative one by district, and even other based on Jakarta. So all of this influence to the provinces and are influenced by district and even other neighbor cities in the area zone. So, ladies and gentlemen, and the second challenge is the integrated approach, to the rural across urban-rural area development, which must be supported by the strong regulation at the higher level. So this is also the challenges. And however, it's true that must be careful instead of centralizing policies or generalizing approaches and strategies, that enduring regional autonomy and distinctive advantages and potential of the cities that I said earlier were very, very diverse. And other challenge is how to build more integrated cross-sectoral approach. The local official government interconnected their plan, program, budgeting, even the evaluation for ultimate mission of the city target. So local government really linked with global issues, and not on silo mentality and fix it the rigid regulation for the short-term objectives, for example, and no one formula for this, I think. And also currently the country also, as we see, this crosses border, cities and regencies as well as urban areas around the cities. The territory must be synergized their government. These are things that must be strengthened, I think, in the U20 for input for the G20 presidency and its member countries. because as we know that global issues in any forum are the same highlighted issues, right? And including those that will be brought up in this U20 forum. But we have to remember that various agreement and commitment and some of agreement by G20 have held a lot of influence, and formulation of the commitment, they have been running and being implemented. So looking ahead, it's time for G20 and its member. The first, I think, emphasizing integrated development for the development of urban residents, not only sectoral and physical, but also more humanist approach for human development. The second one is maybe make integrated rural-urban, cross-urban rural area synergy in each member country to focus on the core problem, based on the problem, not only physical infrastructure, that not only tangible short-term calculation, but should be considered with the greater and longer term that related to sustainable development, for example. So we need make down to earth, climate target, for example, in the city level, or localized SDGs, for example, and let's make resilient city, inclusive city, and safe, hopefully. Because can you imagine, for example, one of the country make any effort? I mean, one of city from the country of G20 make any effort for aggressively with city policies, for example, and from transportation, pedestrian, healthy facilities, for example. But sometimes it could be messy, and not sustained, because not integrated with the rural area neighbor district with the transfers, even though that the same river, the same road, the same resident and the same public place that's used by the city and rural citizens, I think. So, and the third one is to ensuring more up to date policies accordance with the demands of the time, overcoming social problem of urbanization, as well as using appropriate technology. I mean, digitalization, smart city, and scientific development to accelerate economic growth at the city level. It is, I think, it is hope that Apexi cities, Apexi really hope that toward the U20 will be able to convey this to the G20 presidency and its member, and that whatever global issue are discussed, it is the citizen of the city who are the first to receive the impact, actually. When there are natural disaster, environmental damage, or crisis of intolerance and democracy, even during a pandemic, we have a lesson learned that all individual citizens will seek help and protection and ask for response quickly to the city government services, I think. In the other word, all approaches, tools, sources, and various global issues that are on the G20 agenda must emphasize the strategy rule of the city government. I think those are my thoughts, and hopefully U20 will be able to accommodate various major urban problems and be able to facilitate solution in large forum in G20 occasion. Thanks for your attention. Back to you, our great moderator, Bang Andi, back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Pa Alwis, for your remarks. I noted many, but at least you mentioned that the urban problems should not have the generalized policy that need to be more down to earth. And then we have so many challenges that we will discuss more detail on the next session. Thank you again. And having heard from both the international organization and also our local government association, so let us welcome Pak Yudi Hermawan, the head of International Cooperation of Government of DKI Jakarta, who represent the Sherpa, U20 Sherpa. Pak Yudi, the time is yours, Pak.
Ya, terima kasih Mr. Andi for the opportunity. Ya, first of all, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dr. Setiawan Wangsa Atmaja, the esteemed Secretary of West Java Provincial Government, Executive Director IGES Japan, Executive Director of APEXI, other distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good day to all of you. It brings me great pleasure to speak at today's session aimed at enriching the second draft of the Urban 20 Communique, the deliberation that we will have today, including pertaining to urban-rural partnership, will serve as an important contribution to further refine our Urban 20 Communique. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in this auspicious occasion, I have been asked to share my viewpoints on several things. First is on current and future activities of U20. The preparation of U20 2022 Communique has been a collective process. The zero draft of the Communique was discussed during the U20 Sherpa meeting in March 2022. Afterwards, it went through 2 rounds of reviews in April and May 2022, in which we received inputs from the G20 co-Sherpas and the various engagement groups as well as working groups G20. The U20 team are now finalizing the second draft of the Communique, which should hopefully be adopted as a final draft on 10 June 2022. Afterwards, it would go through another red flag round of review before the final Communique is over for mayoral endorsement by early August 2022, while the Urban 20 Summit itself is planned for the 30th to 31st of August 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, the second issue I will share is about the progress of U20 Communique. The theme of this year's Urban 20 Communique is post-pandemic cities. Through this, U20 calls on the G20 to support cities to recover together and stronger from the pandemic. For the U20 Sherpa meeting in March 2022, the U20 co-chairs have proposed 6 core priority issues which the Communique will address. There were: first, economic and social recovery for all; second, productive and affordable housing; third, renewable energy transition; fourth, equal access to sustainable mobility; fifth, mental health and pandemic resilience; and sixth, the future of work. After intensive consultation with a wide range of stakeholders, particularly the U20 member cities and U20 conveners, the 6 core priority issues have been streamlined into 3 priority areas. First, investing in health and public housing as a cornerstone to an economic and social recovery for all. This involves improving the resilience of our city's health system, support for mental health, ensuring social protection, cohesion, providing sustainable, inclusive, and affordable housing, and encouraging urban regeneration. Second, fostering a sustainable energy transition and equal access to sustainable mobility. These include phasing out fossil fuels, reducing the barriers to the uptake of renewable energy in residential, commercial, and industrial areas, and achieving sustainable mobility by increasing the share of urban journeys made by public transport, walking, and cycling. Third one, providing education and training on the future of work to give all people equitable access to the job market. This requires ensuring that urban employment opportunities in the future industries are equitable and accessible to all, elevating the welfare of workers by upholding work-life balance, job security, fair wages, and bolstering just and green jobs through investment, workforce development, and just transition. All of these, of course, require massive public investment and social awareness campaigns at both the local and national level. Third one, allow me to share my expectation from this seminar. We acknowledge the important role of linkages between urban and rural areas, as well as between the different parts of a city region. For example, it would be difficult to achieve sustainable mobility without addressing the land use regulation that shape where people live, work, and play in a city region. Also, it would be a challenge to ensure prosperity and inclusivity in cities without making sure that rural areas and villages are also become more prosperous at the same time. Therefore, we would truly appreciate inputs to enrich the second draft of the U20 Communique through this seminar on empowering the role of urban-rural linkage towards integrated action on localization of SDGs and climate goals at city region. Finally, I wish to convey my heart gratitude to all the organizers for today's event, including the West Java government. The deliberation of the U20 Communique has been a collaborative process, and we intend to continue to make it so by listening to a wide array of feedback and perspective. Therefore, I wish you all the best in your discussion today, and we look forward to receiving the recommendation from today's meeting. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you again, Pak Yudi, for your key notes on first about timeline of how Urban 20 will facilitate the communique, and also remind us about the 6 issues that we will elaborate more. And I think this urban-rural link, as you also may suggest from your recommendation, it can take opportunity to strengthen the issues of social and economic recovery, especially to bring more prosperity and inclusiveness in our development. And ladies and gentlemen, let us hear from the Regional Secretary of West Java Province as the co-chairs and also as the host of this seminar to deliver his keynote and open our seminar. So let's hear the video from Pak Wawan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Mrs. Sri Haryati, Jakarta U20 Sherpa, the Assistant to the Secretary of Jakarta Capital City Government for the Economic Affairs and Finance. The Honorable Mr. Yasuo Takahashi, the Executive Director of IJES. The Honorable Mr. Alwis Rustam, Executive Director of APEXI. The Honorable Dr. Gion Kumar Mitra, Deputy Director of IJES. The Honorable Mrs. Professor Yunita Winarto, Warung Ilmiah Lapangan University of Indonesia. The Honorable Mr. Martin Voss, Policy Advisor, German Watch. The Honorable Dr. Johannes Herbert, Senior Researcher, ZNP and Artec Bremen University. The Honorable Mr. Bernardus Jono Putro, Chairman of Advisory Board, Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners. the Honorable Dr. Hendrikus Andi Simarmata, the President of Indonesia Association of Urban and Regional Planner, or IAP. Good afternoon to all distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the sharpening U20 Issues Note Seminar Enrinching, the second draft of U20 2022 Communique, empowering the role and urban-rural linkage towards integrated actions on localization, SDGs, and climate goals at city region. We would like to thank the Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planner, especially the team for conducting the event, all the distinguished speakers, and also warm greetings to all the seminar participants. In today's seminar, we will continue to elaborate the draft and communique which resulted from the Serva U20 on the last March in Jakarta. Additionally, we expect that the outcome of today's seminars will strengthen the development of the draft of the communique, especially related to the important role of urban-rural linkage.
Buatan Ibu memang selalu enak mengungkapkan kalimat.
West Java provincial government feels the importance of urban-rural linkage for economic recovery by utilizing advances in digital technology. In accordance with the G20 theme, Recover Together, Recover Stronger, West Java has several village programs that are also city solutions. For example, Patriot Desa, Petani Millennial, and Desa Digital. Hopefully, it can be a lesson learned to be enriched from U20 cities member and also supported by G20 countries. These rural empowerment programs are aimed at controlling problems in urban areas such as dependence on employment in urban areas, uncontrolled urban population density due to migration, and concentrated economic cycle in urban areas, and limited food supply and logistics from rural areas. West Java will always try to produce concrete initiatives to promote sustainable development at the regional level, national, but also globally, in tune with our vision and mission Jabar Juara Lahir dan Batin, with innovation and collaboration. West Java provincial government will bring this vision to the global level so all of us could collaborate and innovate together for global recovery. We believe that this seminar, which is assisted by IAP and collaborated with Indonesian University, IJS, and German Watch, will produce key issues and sustainable impact solution to be conveyed to Serva U20 and subsequently in the draft communique. Therefore, we invite all of these seminar participants to actively contribute by giving suggestions and ideas regarding the sharpening issues notes seminar of Urban 20, so the seminar could be implemented effectively. May Allah bless and take care all of us. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Pak Setiawan. And this is also a moment that can be said to open our seminar. And I will give the floor to our MC. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bapak Hendrikus Andi Simarmata, who have delivered the opening speech and also who already present the speakers at the keynote speeches session earlier. Please step down from the stage, sir. Ya, Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, terima kasih kami haturkan kepada Bapak Andi yang tadi telah menyampaikan sambutan dan juga tadi sekaligus sudah memperkenalkan para pembicara di sesi keynote speeches. Terima kasih Bapak, silakan untuk dapat turun dari panggung. Yeah, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to move forward to the panel's discussion. And there will be 4 speakers in this panel discussion, Dr. Bijon Komer Mitra, Martin Vos, Johannes Herbeck, and also Professor Yunita Winarto. But first let me introduce you to the moderator in charge. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, selanjutnya kita akan mengikuti diskusi panel dan akan ada 4 speakers pada diskusi panel ini. Namun sebelumnya saya akan mengenalkan moderator yang akan bertugas pada siang hari ini tentunya ya. He was born in Bandung Graduated from the Bandung Institute of Technology, majoring in urban and regional planning. He has built a career in the private sector, working with many major international firms, including as partner with Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte. He also has extensive experience working in senior positions with Indonesian firms, including Jababeka, Nusantara Infrastructure, and HD Asia Advisory. He is active in civil society and professional associations, and is currently the National Chair of the Planning Ethics Board of the Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners. Beliau lahir di Bandung, lulus dari Institut Teknologi Bandung, jurusan Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota, dan beliau telah membangun karir di sektor swasta, bekerja dengan banyak perusahaan internasional besar sebagai mitra dengan Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte. Beliau juga memiliki pengalaman yang luas bekerja di posisi senior dengan perusahaan Indonesia, termasuk Jababeka, Nusantara Infrastructure, dan HD Asia Advisory. Beliau aktif di masyarakat sipil dan asosiasi profesi, dan saat ini menjabat sebagai Ketua Dewan Etik Perencanaan Nasional Ikatan Perencana Wilayah dan Kota Indonesia. He has worked extensively as an advisor to many investors, Fortune 500 corporations, foreign governments, as well as Indonesian central and local government agencies and political leaders. He is a regular public speaker at international forums and is well versed in the Indonesian public-private partnership teams. He currently sits in the advisory board of the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development of Bandung Institute of Technology. Beliau telah bekerja secara ekstensif sebagai penasihat bagi banyak investor, perusahaan Fortune 500, pemerintah asing, serta lembaga pemerintah pusat dan daerah serta pemimpin politik Indonesia. Beliau adalah seorang public speaker di forum-forum internasional dan fasih dalam tema-tema kemitraan pemerintah swasta Indonesia. Dan saat ini duduk di Dewan Penasehat Sekolah Arsitektur, Perencanaan dan Pengembangan Kebijakan Institut Teknologi Bandung. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, kita sambut bersama kehadiran Ketua Dewan Etik Perencanaan Nasional Ikatan Perencana Wilayah dan Kota Indonesia sebagai moderator. Please welcome the moderator in charge, Chairman of Advisory Board Indonesia Association of Urban Regional Planners, Ketua Dewan Etik Perencanaan Nasional Ikatan Perencana Wilayah dan Kota Indonesia, Bapak Bernardus Jono Putro. Kita berikan tepuk tangan Bapak dan Ibu tentunya. Selamat siang Bapak.
Selamat siang.
Terima kasih telah meluangkan waktunya pada siang hari ini Bapak, dan saya langsung saja persilakan Bapak untuk dapat mengatur jalannya diskusi panel di siang hari ini. Terima kasih.
Thank you for a very kind introduction. Honorables, distinguished guest participants, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua, Sampurasun. As one of the senior advisor to the Governor of West Java, sebagai anggota Dewan Pakar tim Pak Gubernur, izinkan saya untuk mengajak kita semua tenang sejenak dan our heart is broken to learn about the current sad event that is experiencing by our governor as part of the governor senior advisor team. Allow me to send our heartfelt prayers to Pak Governor and family. May this event brings a stronger for Pak Governor. Thank you. Honorable distinguished guest participants, thank you Pak Andi for the kind introductions in the beginning of this seminar. Now let's us continue with the main topic of today's seminar. Previous speakers have shared with us the objectives and how today we are going to discuss and talk about and perhaps come up with inputs and recommendations to contribute to the deliberations of Communique for U20. This is a series of events, and I hope what we will achieve today will significantly contribute to the communique that all of us will come up with. This afternoon, Indonesia time, we have with us 4 distinguished speakers. We are going to discuss the issues on global agenda on sustainability that previous speakers have touched upon. Not to mention, we will also discuss about the unique profile and resources of each of the region that we are going to talk about. We are also going to look at the context of the topics to our cities and rural, and specifically on the objectives of the communique. We have identified the common 6 issues, 3 of them including the health, affordable housings, and also sustainable energy transformation to green energy. This afternoon, we will focus our discussion on urban-rural linkage. With us this afternoon, we have 4 speakers. I would like just to introduce you very quickly on our the 4 speakers. The first speaker is Dr. Bijon Kumar Mitra. He is the Deputy Director of the Integrated Center for Sustainability and Water and Adaptation Unit in Japan. Dr. Mitra holds a PhD degree in Science of Biotic Environment from the Iwate University in Japan. Our second speaker will be Dr. Johannes Herbeck. Dr. Johannes Herbeck at the moment is a senior researcher in a project financed by the German Research Foundation on the mobility and adaptation policies in coastal megacities in Southeast Asia. Dr. Herbeck studied geography, political science, and sociology at the LMU in Munich. Our third speaker is Professor Yunita Winardo. Professor Yunita Winardo is a professor of anthropology of the University of Indonesia, and she is also a member of the Cultural Commission of the Indonesian Academy of Science. Her fields of study include human ecology, public anthropology, dialectics of local and scientific knowledge, creativity and farmer empowerment to respond to ecosystem vulnerabilities and climate change risks. Our fourth speaker, Martin Vos, he is the policy advisor, development banks and climate transparency of German Watch. Martin Vos is a policy advisor covering multilateral processes and institutions with a regional focus on Asia. German Watch is an NGO that seeks to hold German and European actors to account to fight for global equity and the preservation of livelihoods for all. So we have a very distinguished speakers with us, and hopefully by the end of this seminar today, we will take question and answer from the floor and from the Zoom. So I would like to first of all invite Dr. Mitra as the first speaker. Each of the speakers will have 12 to 15 minutes for your presentations, and will be followed by the next speaker. So for the first speaker, I would like to call on Dr. Mitra, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Bernardos, for introducing me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Selamat pagi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is my pleasure to be with you in this important event and to discuss the role of urban-rural linkage toward integrated actions on localization of SDGs and climate goals. So, to empower the urban-rural linkage, we need to take some approach. We need to implement some concept that will actually facilitate the urban-rural linkage, and that will support the sustainable development goals and climate goals. And IGS Executive Director, Mr. Yasu Takahashi, in the opening session, he kindly shared the concept of the regional circulating and ecological sphere approach to encourage or to enhance the urban-rural partnership to realize the localization of SDG and climate goals. In my presentation, I would like to share some application of this concept to act locally toward the sustainable and resilient development. So, okay, so I think from the presentation of Mr. Takahashi, you already understand what is the regional circular ecological approach or concept is. So basically it framed the, based on the integration of low carbon society, resource circulation, and living in harmony with nature. That means the key component of this approach actually to connect the natural capital at the rural and the produce capital in the urban, to explore the simultaneous solution for economy, for environment, and for society, and maximize the or optimize the sustainable use of regional resources through the strengthening partnership between urban and rural. And what is the scope of this regional CS application? The uniqueness of this concept is actually it is very flexible and it has wider scope depending on the local needs, depending on the local context. It can be designed to solve the local issues through solve the regional issues. These are the some of the examples. It can be used to revitalize the local economy. It can be implemented to realize decarbonized society. It can be implemented to manage the natural disaster risk through the ecosystem approaches. And of course, it also can contribute to the post-COVID-19 green recovery and so on. Now, this is actually, I want to show this figure to give an idea that why urban-rural linkage is important and how this CES concept can actually bring the multiple benefits to solve the issues, social issues, environmental issues, and the economic issues in an integrated manner. Mr. Takahashi in his presentation already shared that only 2% of the area is actually accounted by city region, but the demand of natural resources are very high, but they have very limited resources within the city region area. So to act, to deal with these environmental issues or social issues, the city need to actually collaborate with the rural area to capture the or to optimum use of the regional resources in the urban-rural continuum to address the environmental issues, economic issues, and the social issues. So this is one of the example considering the climate change mitigation options. If you see that there are a lot of climate change mitigation options available in the rural area. On the other hand, city, they are contributing to this climate change through the carbon emissions. But they don't have enough resources to mitigate, except the energy efficiency or lifestyle change. But in the rural area, they have a lot of opportunity, like management of the forest that can actually enhance carbon dioxide absorption by forest, capture the renewable energy potential in the rural area that can contribute to the clean energy sources for the urban people, use of blue carbon footprint potential in the rural area, and also agroforestry can be one of the potential area to enhance the decarbonization in the urban and rural continuum. And it can bring social benefit through improving human health at local, at regional level, mitigate effect of various externalities. On the other hand, it can contribute to the revitalization of local economy through creating local jobs, promoting payment for ecosystem services for benefit sharing, and create new business opportunities. And considering the environmental benefit, it can contribute to reduce the emissions, reduce the pollution, and maintain the sequestration capacity of the ecosystem. Ultimately, it can contribute to localization of global goals, through contribute to the net zero commitment, contribute to the various SDGs like SDG 1, SDG 3, 4, 7, 6, 11, 13. Now, I would like to share some of the example in different part of the world already recognize the importance of the urban-rural partnership for achieving SDG as well as climate commitments. Just one of the example I'd like to share here. Some of the examples from the European country, from Barcelona, from Frankfurt, from Frederick Chaban in Denmark. If you see, and also Yokohama in Japan, if you see that all of the cities, all of 4 cities, they actually committed to enhance their capacity of the renewable energy, and some cities, they already set up a target to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050 in Yokohama, 100% renewable energy by 2030 in Frederikshavn in Denmark, and Frankfurt also set a target to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050. What is important and what I would like to highlight here, yes, these cities identified 2 major intervention to achieve this 100% renewable energy. One is the energy saving, that means energy efficiency improvement that can contribute to the 50% of the energy consumption reduction. And for rest of the 50% of the energy will be supplied from the renewable sources. And if you see in case of Frankfurt, it estimated that 25% of the renewable energy can be produced within the city region. But rest of the 25% energy, they need to produce within the region, that means in the rural area. In case of Yokohama, if you see that to achieve the 100% renewable energy by 2050, 4% of the renewable energy can be produced within the city region, and 46% of the renewable energy need to produce outside of the city region. In a later slide, I will show what kind of arrangement Yokohama city consider to achieve this 46% renewable energy production in the outside of the city area, and how it will contribute to the renewable energy, 100% renewable energy target by 2050. And this is one of the approach that actually adopted by the government of Japan in its 5th basic environmental plan in 2018. And as a result, you can see that circulating an ecologically fair approach has been applied in different city regions in Japan to deal with various issues. In some city regions, they utilize or they apply the CS approach for sustainable forest management. In some city regions, they use this approach for renewable energy generation. And in some city regions, they consider this as a water quality conservation. and also in some city they consider it as a way to achieve the net zero. So various actually type of application can be considered for this regional and circulating approach. Now, I would like to share that why Japan government or the local government, they consider this is a appropriate approach to deal with the social, environmental, and economic issues in Japan. If you see what are the issues Japan is facing, one is the depopulation is a big issue, and that lead to the vacant land, increasing vacant land, and also has negative impact to the economy. And what are the actually possible cause of this? What are the effect? One is the declining the working age population. Another is the large volume of the or large number of people migrate outside of the rural area and go to city area, and shrinking sectors. And we need to find the alternative scenarios to actually use the underutilized local resources, how that can be optimum, use optimum way, and that can contribute to address the environmental, social, and economic issues. One of the examples just we mentioned that the vacant land Japan is now facing, increasing vacant land, that can be considered to use for the solar energy generation, and that can be used for the industrial forest and other purposes. And that will actually help to create new job opportunity that can help to contribute in the economic development as well as increase in migrants. And it also will contribute to the environmental commitment by the city regions, that is the net zero or the sustainable development. This is the example I would like to share with you, that how Yokohama City considered to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2050. As I mentioned, that their demand of the energy is 19,000 gigawatt hour. But to achieve this carbon neutrality, they actually can achieve this reduction in the 50% reduction of the energy through the energy efficiency improvement. But for other 50%, they have only actually 8% of the renewable energy generation capacity in the city. So the Yokohama City signed agreement with the 12 local government that is rich with the renewable energy resources and generate the renewable energy in those local government areas, and then they get supplied the renewable energy. So this is the way Yokohama City considered to achieve the 100% renewable energy target by 2050. This is one of the examples, as I mentioned, that this CES approach can be applied for to solve various issues. This is kind of related to climate change adaptation or resilient society related issues. That is, the CES is applied to conserve the water environment in the Kanagawa Prefecture. Our institute is located in the Kanagawa Prefecture. And in Kanagawa Prefecture, there are two major cities, Yokohama City and Kanagawa City, located. And most of the water supply comes from the water catchment area in the upstream, which are basically forest area, and most of the forest area is owned by private owners. That means 70% of the forest area owned by private owners. But forestry become a non-profitable business. So, and also, as I mentioned, that the rural area are facing the depopulation issues, so they have lack of the human resources to manage the forest. That affect the water supply in the urban area in Yokohama and Kanagawa. So, as a solution, Kanagawa prefectural government actually come up with a water environment conservation scheme, under that scheme, that urban people, we provide the water conservation tax, and that money actually used to manage the forest in the rural area, to support the cost for the human resources, to make the forest business profitable. Like that way, urban and rural collaboration is helping to manage the water environment and provide the win-win solution. This is another example how urban and rural collaboration is working in Kitakyushu area to manage the waste issues in that city region. And this actually provide the win-win situation for the farmers in the rural area. They get the organic fertilizer from the urban waste, and on the other hand, urban people get the organic agricultural product supply from the surrounding rural area. So this is another example.
You have 1 minute, Dr. Mitra. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And just I want to share that recently the IPCC 6th assessment report has been opened for the public. If you see that working group 2, this working group 2 chapter on the impact, adaptation, and vulnerability, that also highlighted the importance of the CES approach in this important assessment report. That means this CES approach is getting attention, not only in Japan, but also in the international assessment report. My point is that to bridge the urban-rural linkage, or to realize the urban-rural linkage, we need to take an approach, and CES can be an integrated approach to promote this urban-rural linkage. And therefore, we are working together with our partners in our today's moderator of the opening session, Dr. Andy, also our partner, and he is one of the key members of this consortium. We are working together to promote this concept in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And if you see, we are working in various regions in this Asia and Pacific. And our approach is actually bottom-up approach, closely work with the city government, closely work with the rural government, and bring them in the common platform to co-design the CES in the context of rural issues. And that actually can lead to the policy development in the national level and contribute to the global agendas. And we are, this consortium actually working to help to generate the scientific knowledge to support the policy making. This is one of the example from the Udong Sani. We try to show that how urban-rural linkage can provide the food security in the Udong Thani region. And we are also closely working with the multi-stakeholders through a platform. As I mentioned, that it is important to have a CES platform. And we are working to establish regional platform in each city region to identify the interdependencies in the urban-rural, and considering that interdependency, what kind of regional CES program need to be developed, and what kind of governance mechanism will be required to apply this CES approach in city regional context. So this is some of the outreach work and communication through various international events to promote this concept. And now you can also find some knowledge material about the concept, and we are now working on a book. After this book release, you will have more information about this concept. We hope that this concept can be integrated in the U20 Communique as an approach to strengthen the urban-rural linkage, and which is essential to realize the localization of SDG and localization of climate change mitigation. So that is all of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. Certainly some few details there and very interesting. Let me just introduce to the next speaker. I would like to call on Dr. Herbeck for the next presentations, and I believe you will be sharing with us your views on managing blue urban. Dr. Herbert, your time is yours. We have 15 minutes for your session. Are you with us, Johannes?
Yes, hello.
Okay, please.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thanks, Pa Andi, for inviting me for today's meeting. I'm really honored and pleased to be part of this process. So first of all, a big thank you to everyone and good afternoon. I will present some of the insights into a research project that we are currently carrying out. With the longer title, I've shortened it down to Knowledge Transfers for Blue Urbanism, because this is really at the center of our interest. I have to admit that we have a relatively clear urban focus in our project, but I think that some of the questions that we ask and some of the interests that drive our research are also very much applicable for analyzing knowledge transfers also in urban rural setups and the linkages that are established here. So I'm just trying to switch the slide. Yes, now it's working. So the work that we are currently carrying out together with a lot of partners, amongst them also Pa Andi and his team at UI, but also partners at the National University in Singapore and at Ateneo de Manila. It has been embedded in an earlier phase, already also financed by the German Science Foundation, that was focusing on what kinds of ideas and recipes for living with, or also living against sea level change, something that I call here climate solutionism, how some of those ideas gain traction or political interest, political legitimacy, why and how. Also asking what kind of interests the projects serve that can be observed in climate change adaptation. And it was not surprising to find that many of the solutions that are implemented or at least discussed in many Southeast Asian cities often hinge on the emphasis of grand infrastructural projects. Most of them also very much expert-driven projects, for example, influenced by Dutch, Japanese, Danish, and also German consultancies that propose certain blueprints to those cities. At the same time, it is also clear that those blueprints and the ideas that are proposed to those cities go through changes. The flow of ideas is not unidirectional, but there's also a circulation and travel back to places of origin of some of those ideas. When you look at how cities and the urban areas are displayed in global discourses around climate change, it is quite clear that there's a clear dualism. On the one hand, and I'm citing here from a very recent UN Habitat document, on the one hand, cities are displayed as being increasingly at risk. Cities worldwide are increasingly suffering the effects of climate-related other challenges and hazards such as floods, drought, sea level rise, heat waves, landslides, and storms, and so on. Home to more than half of the world population, cities and towns are places where people, assets, and economic activity are concentrated and are at risk. So there's a clear risk focus here. On the other hand, cities are also displayed as bearing a lot of opportunities. And the document goes on, while facing important challenges, cities are also places of opportunity and innovation in developing sustainable solutions to bounce forward after a disruption. Therefore, climate adaptation is one of the key priorities for future urban resilience and the health and well-being of people and the environment. So you see that cities do play a crucial role also in those adaptation discourses and are displayed as both risk-driven as well as opportunity-driven. And with those two premises in mind, we have turned for this the second phase of our project, we've turned towards the discourse of blue urbanism. a term that has been coined by planning scholar Timothy Beatley from 2014 onwards, and that has been quite successful as broad reference point for urban planning also in the context of climate change since then. The starting point of the debate has been a claim of a new urbanism that needs to bring back the ocean into the cities, blurring also the strong boundaries between both and frontiering the urban and the oceanic. The main aim of Beatley's intervention was to reconnect cities with the oceans that surround them often, combating ocean blindness, as he has called it. And he did so by applying what we think is a mainly utilitarian and very much resource-centric understanding of oceanic ecosystems. His intervention concentrates very much on, for example, waterfront leisure, on community fisheries, aquaponics, the use of tidal energy, etc. And he did so by mainly translating his ideas of green urbanism that he has worked on before to the idea of blue urbanism. Just very much, we think, keeping or continuing the very terrestrial mindset in urban planning that is still also very obvious in blue urbanism. Another critique that we have with regard to his approach is that it's very much northern centric, and it is very much flattening transcultural differences also in the kinds of how cities interact with the oceans and the sensibilities that come with them. Also, when it comes to the examples that he brings forward, you see that it's very much a northern-centric discourse, bringing in Rotterdam, New York City, Copenhagen, and to a lesser extent also Singapore. So we felt the need to delve deeper into what we think is really crucial here, namely the politics of future making, because much of the projects that we've observed are very much working with aspirations, also with imaginaries of futures that are envisioned for the cities. And this is very much a research focus that we have, looking at how imaginaries, but also policies and practices of futuring cities along coasts and in deltas are negotiated. And we do so by focusing on two very concrete infrastructural solutions that have been gaining traction in global discourses, but also within the region. Again, putting into conversation the cities that we've concentrated before, Singapore, Manila, and Jakarta, but take a more global picture here and also bringing in some of cities, for example, in Western Europe, Rotterdam, Dordrecht, or Hamburg, that work with some of those solutions, and also cities in Tokyo and South Korea. So those infrastructures that we look at are multifunctional dikes, a form of protective living, keep the water out of the cities. And the second infrastructural solution are floating structures and artificial islands, a more amphibious way of living with and also making a living from coastal waters. Of course, when looking at those expert-driven and in some forms also the very much elitist discourses that you see in relation to those technologies, it is clear that those very general ideas also do not justice to the I would say messy realities on the ground. And I'm bringing in some examples from northern Jakarta here. When you look at what you could call blue urbanities in northern Jakarta, you see that they reflect, of course, a multiple of lived realities, diversity of waters, a multiple littoral, as we call them. And when you look at those spatial interventions that you see, there, of course, there's a succession of planning or development mantras that have changed over time and that very much influence the space-making processes here. And in recent years, and this is not only in Jakarta, but in many cities in the region, you see a transfer from risk to more incentive-driven interventions, something that we call speculative futuring. And this is true for many cities in the area. When you look at those larger processes like the Manila Bay Master Plan, or also the NCICT in Jakarta, or Singapore's adaptation pathways, you see a lot of infrastructural development, large-scale infrastructure, a lot of concrete that is put into those coastal areas, of course, also adding value to places that are already at risk. And you might maybe talk about catch-up development of heavy infrastructuration, but I leave this with a question mark. So now again, I'm having trouble to switch the slides. Here we go. And the Great Garuda, or the NCICD, and the envisioning process behind it is also maybe something that could explain a bit more what we mean with this speculative futuring. Of course, this comes as well with different forms of island reclamation, something that you could call a new coast rush, creating land from the sea to also kind of finance some of the protective infrastructures that you want to put into place. So a lot of value in speculative futuring that you see, and this is also happening in other places. Here's the city of Pearl in Metro Manila, a whole city quarter that is supposed to be put into the coastal waters and to add value here as well. As I said, we are mainly interested also in the kinds of knowledge transfer that is going on, and when simply looking at the involvement of external actors in the projects, those larger projects that we've looked at, the adaptation pathways in Singapore, the Manila Bay Master Plan in Manila, and the NCICD in Jakarta, you see that there's a lot of external expertise that goes into the creation and the blueprinting of those projects. With, for example, I'm just picking out one example here, Deltares, the Dutch Water Institute, that is practically active in all three cases, and that brings, of course, a certain expertise and mindset to those planning processes. At the same time, you also see, of course, objections to this form of external intervention. This is just a very brief picture of a protest in Jakarta that especially thematizes this international involvement and criticizes it as well. As I said before, we're also interested in the differences, how then on the ground in affected communities adaptation looks like. We're talking here about the everyday life worlds of subsidence as one of the driving forces behind the relative sea level rise that you see for example, in northern Jakarta. And you see, of course, a multiple watery flows, different fluxes and states that are to be seen in those places. And you do see, of course, also a myriad of adaptive practices that are very much in contrast to what I've displayed earlier in the context of speculative futuring and those grand infrastructural projects. You see a lot of small-scale adaptive practices, vernacular practices, you could call them, that are, of course, perceived mainly reactionary, piecemeal solution, household-based, but still there is a lot of practices and activities of people living in those areas, in the wetlands, or you see in those small quotes below, we live between swamp and soil. It's now like a river, wet all the time, but still people are dealing with those kinds of situations. One of those practices, for example, is Nimbun, self-reclamation, an act of soil making where construction, rubble, wooden shards, shells are used to raise grounds, to create a floating mass that is soggy to the food, permeable to floodwaters, and is very much a gendered social practice, but also a very distinct urban knowledge that also reacts to some of those sea level changes that are happening there.
You have 2 minutes, Dr. Herbeck.
Minutes, yes, that's fine. Okay. I'm coming to an end. I mean, to conclude, maybe to give a first idea, why we think it's important also to listen to the stories, to different kinds of stories that I've just depicted, and also to the polarities, binaries that come with it. I mean, first you see this difference between dry versus watery territory making that we also reflect in those different technologies that we look. Then also this difference between reclamation, the idea of reclamation versus thoughts of managed retreat that are also increasingly led in certain areas at least. And then this difference between dystopian versus utopic imaginaries, also a difference between marginality and affluence in coastal areas. And then, as I've showed, the big difference between grant projects that also come along often with gentrification processes versus those everyday practices of survival and transgression that are also important to look at. So what does it mean? What can I conclude also for today's session? I think although we're concerned with rural-urban linkages, I think it's also important to understand this international city-to-city connections when we want to see this kind of knowledge transfer that can happen and has to happen in coastal adaptation processes. We have seen a focus on grand infrastructure projects beyond risk-centeredness that were there before, connected with what we call speculative futuring. We have seen that blue urbanism could be a potential new planning paradigm, but it has to account for the cultural differences that are prevalent in regions. So, and I'd like to maybe start with, end with two simple questions. I mean, one would be, how can we understand knowledge transfer also of those specific local forms of adaptation, the low-cost solutions that people are taking? How can we organize the transfer of such, as we said, urban knowledges, and maybe to also the other places? And what does this then also mean for the urban-rural linkages that we are interested in today's session? I'd like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Herbeck. That's a very very important notes that you have, and thank you for keeping it 15 minutes. Very good. It's very interesting. Menarik ya, ada perhaps corporatization of future risks. Yeah, that's in my word. I think it's something that we. It's very intriguing. Let me get back to that during discussion time. I would just like to invite the third speaker, Professor Yunita Winarto. Kami persilahkan, waktunya 15 menit. Prof, terima kasih.
Okay. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Andi, who invited me to share my experience. Also to all the guests and speakers. I'm very honorable to meet you all. I'm sorry, I'm an anthropologist. I'm not an urban specialist, but Dr. Andi asked me to share my experience in enriching rural people's knowledge, so as to help improving the urban-rural linkage. So thank you for the introduction earlier. I'm also happy since I'm also a task member of the engagement group of Science 20. So hopefully we can build our linkages for the G20 summit in the future, near future. I would like to share my PowerPoint file. Is it okay here? Yeah.
Yes, that looks fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Pak Moderator, yeah. So this is the title of my presentation: Enriching Farmers' Knowledge to Go Better to Climate Change. This is a very important issue because farmers are different from us in the urban area. Yeah? Many of us are educated, but they lack of access to any information. So how to strengthen the role of rural people if we do not share our time, our energy, our expertise to enrich farmers' knowledge, especially to go better to climate change? I would like to share with you, Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry, wait, yeah. Sorry. Okay, this is the picture of farmers. What is he doing? He is measuring rainfall in a rain gauge, and the rain gauge was made by farmers themselves, but it is based on the measurement that has already been officially recognized by the president of World Meteorological Organization, who was collaborating with me. He was the agrometeorologist, but he passed away, and I'm now collaborating with an agrometeorologist from Africa. So this is the rain gauge. Actually, this is a place mounted in the farmer's own field, and the farmers named it as omplong. Yeah? A rain gauge made by farmers. In another area, they named it as like centong and lodong. Yeah, it's in local languages. So this is very important and very significant new knowledge for farmers, that they are now able to measure rainfall every day in their own field. So why urban-rural linkage is important? So I observed and followed what was happening during the pandemic in the last 2 years. Yeah? So this is the pile of the cabbages and the vegetables that were not able to be sold because in the first year of pandemic, there's a sudden loss of income generation for farmers. They failed to sell vegetables to local, city, regional, and international markets, and also sudden collapse of incoming food products for urban people. I think we all experienced this, and the piles of vegetables being sold at a much lower price for local people, so no profit making at all, just to return their spending, and then consumed by local household, distributed them for free, or being left rotten. So the most vulnerable thing is the disruption of the supply chains. So the disruption of urban-rural linkage under the large-scale social limitation policy in the midst of pandemic, especially in the first year of pandemic. And then we just learned from how the situation in China, with the Shanghai lockdown. So the second year, the farmers told me that it is more relaxed, and we could still sell our products to regional markets, also to Jakarta, but there was an increasing cases of COVID-19 in the rural area, unlike the year before. So this is the trade-off. If you open a more relaxed, more relaxed mobilization of people, then there are increased number of cases. So this is the situation, but it is okay now. It is returned to, normal, but learning from that problems. So I argue that there is a great need to advance and strengthen the economic digitization, so to improve the urban-rural linkage through digital technology, and also still need to strengthen and advance people's knowledge. Yeah. So, Now, first is the development and advancement of digital technology. This helped the linking rural and urban through online marketing and distribution. A group of young people from the urban areas tried to initiate to help the farmers in the rural area to market their products. So they made a hub. And Tani Hub is now very popular, very prominent, very promising, not only for the rural farmers, but also for the young urban people, so they can market, and then the young people in the urban area distribute it to the consumers. Second thing that was initiated by a group of farmers in the rural area in the south of West Java, Pangandaran areas, they try to shorten the supply chains, selling the products directly to consumers in urban areas, using also digital technology. So they just brought the vegetables inside they bought a car, a van, and then distributed straight door to door. Those who need the vegetables, need the food stuffs, but they cannot find it in the market or have difficulties to get in a good amount of vegetables. Now, the third area that was developed by farmers themselves in the rural areas is how they try to enrich their own knowledge and skills to produce post-harvesting food products. Why? Because according to them, if we do not improve our knowledge and skills to improve the technology of making a food, post-harvesting food products, so we cannot avoid the damage of the raw materials. So farmers use in West Java, especially in Sumedang Region C, it was well known for the peyem, the fermented singkong of cassava. But they cannot sell the fermented cassava straight away during the pandemic. So what did they do? They tried to learn, they got the experience from internet and learning from other people how to make flowers from the cassava, and from the flowers they can produce cakes. So these are all the initiatives both by the urban and rural people to solve the problems of the pandemic. But I think not only the pandemic, but the climate change is a continuous threat for farmers. Yeah? So the production and the farmers' livelihood is a threat during the climate change, which is still continuous. But do the farmers know about this threat? So when I was with them in the field, so farmers always ask question. Do farmers know? My question, do farmers know of climate change phenomena based on their empirical knowledge? Because they learn something from their empirical knowledge. It's different from us. We can learn it from reading books, from our laboratory, but they rely on their empirical knowledge. Yeah. So this is do farmers know that their field's vulnerability are caused by the consequences of climate change? So one consequence of climate change is the increasing climate variability. Why does the start of this rainy season planting differ from the previous season? Yeah. So why are there plenty of rains in the dry season planting like now? It should be the start of the dry season. Why there are still lots of rains? Or otherwise, why there are not much rains in the rainy season? So there's a dry field. And the second consequence is the increasing global temperature. Why is there a decline in the season's yields through the growth of plants? Though the growth of plants look normal, the growth of plants look normal. There is no pest and disease infestation. But why my yields reduced? Almost 10% or more than 10%. They didn't understand that the increase of the temperature in the midnight, I think the very coldest temperature, the very lowest temperature midnight, if it is increased 1 degree Celsius during the ripening stage, then it can reduce the yields up to 10%. But farmers did not get any idea, and nobody told them of what is the risk to their plants, to their food production. And the more frequent and more severe of extreme events, we realized that. So the farmers asked, why in a sudden were there huge flood and landslides, damaging the 2 hectares of my chili plants? I've never had this experience before, and in a sudden, my 2 hectares of chili plants damaged. I could not earn any profits. So to secure and improve urban-rural linkage, I argue strongly that we need to develop long-term educational commitment to farmers. It is not efficient or effective if we only provide short-term training project. Needs a long-term educational commitment through providing climate services and developing farmers' analytical capability and decision-making. Not only introducing technology. I observed the introduction of climate-smart technology. Oh, this is the adaptive strategy towards adaptation, the effective strategy to mitigate the gas emission. So the farmers learned the technology, but didn't understand how to analyze the risk of the climate change and how to anticipate and to better make the decision. Therefore, my team from the Universitas of Indonesia introduced the science field shops. This is based on an interdisciplinary approach with an agrometeorologist. So this is an agrometeorological learning arena to make farmers researchers and scientists in their own fields. And by being researchers or scientists, they can become capable persons in sustaining food production in the midst of ongoing climate change. I'm an anthropologist. I do not understand the nitty-gritty of the climate change and the agrometeorology, but the agrometeorologist needs our help to transfer the applied dimension of agrometeorology to help them to be able to analyze what is happening in their fields and what should I do? How could I improve my analytical capability? And the most important thing is the anticipation capability. This one is this analytical capability so that they will be able to anticipate better, almost lacking in various kinds of governments or scientists' introduction to the farmers in the rural areas. So throughout how many years? This almost 12 years already. We are gradually establishing the 8 climate services. So we provide climate services, not technology directly, but through the climate services. The first one is how to measure rainfall daily.
You have
they
2 minutes.
have to measure rainfall daily in farmers' own fields, not in other fields, but in their own fields. Make their own fields a station, rainfall station, and then observe agroecosystem, carry out monthly evaluation at the end of 3 decadal period, 10 days period, observing what are the vulnerabilities they found to get in their fields, and then discuss to find solution together. And the most important thing for them is evaluating yields between individual farmers in one planting season. Why you can get 8 tons per hectare, why I can only get 5 tons per hectare. They try to analyze it to understand what are the causal factors. And by understanding that, they would learn that in the near future or in the future, if they experience the same climate condition, they have to be careful, they have to be ready to avoid the yields reduction or yields failure. Yeah? And then organizing the science workshop should be by farmers themselves. So we try to empower them, so to enable them to continue the learning activities by themselves, and also to strengthen oneself and groups' cohesiveness as farmers researchers. Because if they are alone, they feel lonely, they do not know where to go. But as a group, they can find solution together, they can communicate. And by doing that, as a scientist, I could not stay longer in the field, but they can do by themselves, they can manage their learning by themselves. But of course, they still rely on the help of the scientists, especially in disseminating climate scenarios to enable farmers to anticipate better. Like I just received, I think yesterday's scenarios that the previous scenarios that La Nina will return to normal condition in the beginning of June. And then yesterday, I received a scenario from my partner, agrometeorologist in Africa, South Africa, that there will be continuous La Nina for another 3 months plus 3 months period. So then farmers can interpret that there will be lots of wet days, and then the intensity of rainfall will increase, and it will be across most of the areas in Indonesia. And then
another 1 minute,
important
Prof.
things for the scientists, if we have to provide new knowledge if they need help. So, but they can also ask their friends, their colleagues, the same farmers who had the experience how to solve vulnerability issues. They can also invite local agriculture staff or invite agriculture officials, whoever, to help them. Now, in this stage, in these 6 services, so you can introduce new knowledge, new strategies, new technology, but without 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the technology would not last long. And then the important thing is to carry out win-win solution experimentations, not demonstration plot. Yeah, the agricultural staff or the corporates used to come to the village and then provide and then ask farmers to watch the demonstration, to observe the demonstration plot. They rent a plot, a field, and then this, for example, they introduce new pesticides or new fertilizers, and then farmers have to observe. But here, you do your own experimentation based on your question. What questions you want to ask? Let's do the experimentation. So by doing that, it is expected that farmers can develop their mitigation and adaptation. And the the final service is digitizing, so that they will not lose their data. So these are some photos measuring rainfall, observing their agro-ecosystem in their fields. And this is farmers discussing their findings and presenting their data to get question and answer and discussions and what is the problems and how we solve the problems. And this is the yield evaluation. And then this is a structure, the organization structure of farmers' own organization. And this is the seasonal scenario sent to me in English through email. And then I translate it in Bahasa Indonesia. It is not easy because of the technical terms, but I try to translate it as much as I can. But I cannot avoid not to use La Nina, El Nina, etc. But through our get-together, our discussions, I explain what does it mean, the technical terms. Yeah, and this is the new knowledge, an experimentation about diverse soil structures and with different mold system. And then if you pour water, let's see what's the difference and which kind of soil structure and molds that will help you reducing the leakage of water. And this is the experimentation of soil to know how homogenized or how heterogenized their soil in their own field, in one plot of field. Yeah. So this is the agrometeorological learning in the science field jobs.
Prof, we have difficulties in...
Okay, and this is the example of annual rainfall graph. So digitization is the 8 climate services. Yes. And this is the climate scenarios. 2 more slides, ya Pak, ya. Climate scenarios of September 2021, just recently, March 2022. See, there was a neutral condition at the end of September, but trending towards more than 50% chance of La Nina from September 2021 until March, when it is predicted to return to neutral. And farmers have the interpretation, an indication that La Nina could emerge because 50% chance. The indication is true. Now we have rains before November, and the rainfall would bring lots of water, and the high intensity of rains would lead to outbreaks of pests and disease. So these are 4 diverse responses by farmers in different ecosystems. Yeah. Postpone the planting till end of February to avoid failure of making nursery. Dry rain-fed farmer decided to start planting early as possible to use the abundant water, but selecting short age maturing variety. Irrigated farmer also decided to wait till water is enough and selecting short age maturing variety. And watermelon farmers, some decided to plant in August, still okay, but those who planted in September will experience harvest failure.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
My last slides.
I think we have difficulties in looking at your slides.
To convince you that sustaining food production, strengthening farmers' livelihood, can alleviate urban vulnerability. So this is a probability graph made by young farmer. Yeah, young farmer. He introduced the result of his analysis. in a farmer meeting, in a village meeting. This is also a young farmer presented his crossbreeding cultivar of filial 6, and these are the farmers show their their local cultivar, who was sold to the Jakarta, to the main trader.
Thank you. Send message ke ibunya. Chat. Bu Prof, unfortunately we cannot see your slides. Nyalain lagi aja. Nyalain lagi aja.
Sorry, I'm clicking my mute, yeah, my audio.
Yes, you're
sorry.
over time. Thank you. Do you have, if any closing remarks? 30 seconds.
Did
maybe?
it take
Thank you.
long time or not? Because maybe it was clicked.
No, it's okay. If you have a closing remarks, 30 seconds, half a minute.
Yeah, actually, I would like to mention that strengthening food production, that sustaining food production, it means strengthening rural livelihood,
yes,
sustainability, and will alleviate the urban vulnerability. Yeah? As mentioned in my slide, and young farmers have the potentials to also make their own craft, to make their interpretation, to convince other farmers also in the village meeting, and also they can also produce their own cultivars. And now recently, their local cultivars were sold to a main trader in Jakarta to be exported also to Saudi Arabia. So it can, if you pay attention to farmers, to the local people, how to help them to survive in the midst of ongoing climate change, then you will also have more a sustainable food supply. Yeah, sorry for my clicking in that my audio. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
okay?
Professor.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's very enlightening. Our next speaker, I would like to invite Martin Vos. Are you with us? Who is going to share with us issues on climate-proofing infrastructure for urban and rural area. Martin, are you with us?
I'm here.
Yes, please.
Hello.
If you can keep the presentation to 15 minutes, will be much appreciated, Martin. Thank you. So that we can discuss later on. Yeah, thank you. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to start, maybe can I share my own presentation if you don't mind? I'll do it myself. Perfect. So thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, honorable guests and co-speakers, dear hosts of this important event. My name is Martin Vos, and it's my pleasure and an honor to be presenting here as part of this panel. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to provide input to the discussion of the U20 draft communique of this year. Can you see my slides well, so that there's no technical issues?
Yes, slides.
Okay, perfect. I'll try to be brief because we're well behind schedule, so I'll try to make some overarching inputs. First off, maybe to give you an idea of how I'm approaching this topic that's at the discussion here. We've been working on the issue of urban-rural linkages and how it can be improved for years at German Watch, and we've been doing so with partners in Asia and trying to enhance climate action through infrastructure investment, mostly. And our partners from India, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and China, we collectively pursue this goal through policy research and multi-stakeholder dialogues. And the particular focus there has been the Multilateral Development Bank, AIIB, I'm very sure have heard of, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And this multilateral bank, which Germany is a member of, needs to align its operations with the goals of the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. And we think that this is a good paradigm to talk about how to make investments anywhere, but also in urban regions, more sustainable. So far, we've analyzed dimensions of alignment regarding decarbonization and climate resilience building and urban infrastructure investments. All three topics were dedicated a standalone report, the cover of which you've just seen on the previous slide. The AIB is not the only development bank, of course, and all development banks and public finance and development finance institutions need to drive change, especially in the climate resilience building in this current world where multiple crises and mega trends overlap. And this is a thing where we've identified a lot of overlapping challenges that are being faced in most regions, but also in the urban field. And we think that this affects the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic as much as the climate crisis. And we think that poor and vulnerable population groups need special attention. And especially in the time up to 2050, there's a need for investments of around $6 trillion that need to be invested in infrastructure every year. This is where development banks come in, and we think, especially in the urban field, they need to be adequately instructed to help and move us towards sustainable cities and suburban regions. So we had some guiding questions that we wanted to tackle that allowed us to develop a reference framework for climate resilient infrastructure. And there we analyzed policy strategies and guidelines that were existing at development finance institutions, in our example of AIIB. But we think that this is a good example to exercise some scrutiny and really multiply this analysis and try to take it further and instruct civil society and member countries and the countries anywhere to advocate for more sustainable infrastructure investments. And the key takeaways that we've taken are that climate-related damages to infrastructure will rise running up to the end of the century if no investments are made in resilience, and especially coastal cities will be affected most. Of those, of course, those located in Asia. And so far, the requirements to enhance climate resilience are not implemented adequately by all multilateral development banks and DFIs and other public finance institutions. So we argue that to face if we shift our gaze to the urban paradigm, to face up to the key challenges that are a risk to sustainable cities. Excuse me. And there we identified that urban greenhouse gas emissions are one of the challenges. Another is the trend of urbanization, which is a key driver for land use change. And also this in hand drives social inequality, which is also particularly high in cities and urban regions. Furthermore, urban production and consumption are not sustainable. Cities are hotspots of air pollution, water contamination, and waste problems. And last but not least, there is an ongoing and exacerbating problem of traffic, which is mostly collapsing in all sprawling and growing cities and mega cities around the world. So from these 5 challenges, we've identified imperatives to counteract these. And they are quickly to decarbonize and achieve net greenhouse gas neutrality, to make land use more efficient, to focus on biodiversity and ecosystems, to conserve them and restore them, then social inclusion and resilience, poverty eradication, circular economy and zero waste, and a post-fossil mobility framework. And I think it's quite apt to try to convert these into principles upon which all infrastructure investment should build. And for those principles, I think it's a good time to reflect these when it comes to developing and discussing the U20 draft communique. And I would like to quickly present them here. It's the urban net zero principle. So new settlements planned should be net zero, carbon-free buildings, materials used should also be in line with this. Low cost, low carbon retrofitting, green electricity, post-fossil modernity, mobility, restoration, and carbon sinks are what underpin the net zero principle. We've exercised this for another 6 principles, all of which are identified and specified by an underlying 31 criteria. So it goes on to talk about climate resilience, efficient land use, nature positive, circular economy, zero waste, socially inclusive, resilient cities, and urban pro-poor principle. So the focus to generate value for the poor and the marginalized, transformation to achieve the SDGs, enabling policy frameworks supported, accessibility, affordability, participation, and transparency. We think that this is something that all constituencies of development banks should be able to check off when it comes to assessing the impact of infrastructure that's being planned. So for this, we've developed a traffic light system to gauge the sustainability of infrastructure investments. And I will not go into detail here in the interest of time, but these 7 principles underpinned by 31 criteria are a part of this traffic light system, which we in our latest report offer to civil society and constituents to assess and use as a tool to confront investors and make them accountable to the goal of aligning with the Paris Agreement, with the climate and adaptation goal, with the SDGs, with the Sendai framework, and make infrastructure investments, be they in the urban field or in rural areas, more sustainable. I'm just going to click those quickly. You can see here, this is exercised at the example of the AIIB, but really this is something that can be applied to any undertaking in this field. And if you'd like to learn more about this, feel free to get in touch with me. Feel free to check our report, which is available online. And I'd be happy to answer questions regarding this in writing or following this presentation in our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So we have covered all the topics for the afternoon, and I think for those who have just joining the webinar, we have here from 4 of our distinguished presenters. We talk about urban and rural linkages in various different dimensions of that links. Speakers touch upon the importance of local resources, the onset of renewable energies, and all the opportunities and issues arising from taking up renewable energy. We discuss several examples from cities in Japan, and also we touch on the resiliency and how infrastructure as part of the political reality of our cities. They also posed the questions: who benefited from all this infrastructure in major cities? Is this a new urbanism in the making? Or are we looking at a more speculative futuring driven by a certain group of corporations and consultants? Prof. Yunita also shared with us how changes are happening in farmers in our villages, in our rural area. And the importance of making farmers and rural communities as researchers in looking at changes because of climate change. And certainly, last but not least, we talk about the infrastructure of urban infrastructure as well as rural infrastructure, and how those infrastructure been resilient and also adopt the sustainability and green values in those infrastructure. Also very important, I think we touch upon the context of all this, which also includes the needs to look at the capacity of each of the cities as well as its rural surroundings. There is a big question surrounding fiscal capacities of our cities, whether or not our cities can afford the needed infrastructure for all this what we're talking about. To put also into context, I think it's also important for us to look at examples of the host region, which is West Java. A very unique, I think, situations in West Java, the largest province in Indonesia with over 50 million population. And if we talk about renewable energy, this province is the largest geothermal producer. The reserve of our geothermal, approximately 40% of global geothermal potential, which is more than 60% of national potential of geothermal. And if you combine that with what kind of investment is needed to get those renewable energy out for the cities, and what is the fiscal capacities of our regions to be able to do that, then I think we start talking about how to do the future scenario of this. Another interesting example in West Java is when we talk about rural area, West Java as the biggest province in Indonesia have come up with several programs in the rural area, including the last one, which is Petani Millennial, where we talk about empowering our new generations to become a more digitized, as Prof. Unita said earlier, for our new generations of farmers and people in the rural area to be more technology minded and becoming more digitized. Also, I think it's worth for the convenience of this communique to look at the end of the day, livability as a measure. How livable is our cities? The Indonesian Associations of Urban and Regional Planners, or IAP, conducted a regular Indonesia Most Livable City Index, which look at livabilities of our cities, and big cities as well as smaller cities. And the research shows that almost 40% of our cities are perceived as not livable or less livable by its population. So we do have a challenge there in terms of achieving the sustainability and at the same time also achieving the livability level of our cities. So with that, we still have, I think, we are running out of time. We still have another probably 10 minutes, if it's okay, with the committee. So I would like to invite one or two questions from the floor. Do we have questions from the webinar, from the Zoom? No question? Oh, there is a question. Let's see one or two. Or is there any question from the floor here today? Nothing yet? So let me just go through one questions and see. The question is from Stevie Leonard. The question is, may I know the details for the cooperation on circular economy and zero waste in a U20 framework? Is it through sister cities or a new kind of arrangements? Do we look at cooperation in circular economy? Are we going to recommend sister cities programs like we know it before, or are we recommending a new kind of arrangements at all? So who probably will be best to answer this? I guess let me perhaps address to Martin. Martin, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you. I've addressed the question in the chat box, so I wrote to Stevie already that we, in our cooperation that we've been conducting over the last few years, have independently reached out, not under the framework of the U20, but maybe somebody else on the panel could weigh in on how zero waste and circular economy is addressed under the U20 framework, and maybe amend some of the inputs that I've given.
Yeah, let me throw this question to Dr. Mitra, perhaps, with your experience looking at few of the projects in Japan and few other cities. What is your take on this in terms of cooperation between cities and a circular economy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. I think this is a very good question, that how circular economy and the city corporation, the collaboration between cities can be integrated in U20 Communique. And from the experience of Japan, if you see that actually the circular and ecological sphere concept, that actually enhance the collaboration between cities, between the cities and the rural authority, to actually enhance the utilization of local resources. If you see my presentation, that like Yokohama City, they have collaboration with the other cities or rural authority in other area to actually have the renewable energy generation and create some kind of circular economy between the city and rural, between the city and other city. Similarly, in Kitakyushu case, if you see that the management of the waste is one of the area where city and rural area can collaborate, and that can contribute to the circular economy through use of the waste as a resource. Like use of waste as a resource and convert it to the fertilizer for the rural people. So like that way, actually city collaboration can actually enhance the circular economy, as well as that can contribute to the net zero. So that is my response.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. If there's no question, perhaps I do have a question for Dr. Herbeck. Very, very interesting the one slides that you had on the charts there on the three different projects in Manila, Singapore, and Jakarta. So your research shows that, pose the questions of speculative futuring, and it seems like we are looking at apparently a footprints of just a few names and few actors okay, that is working across border and also in the region. How do you think this is? How do you think we can ensure that all these initiatives will be beneficial to the local environment? And do we need to improve the local wisdom and the active participation of local actors and local consultants and local experts? I might be a bit direct here, but I think you know where I'm getting. Please.
Thank you very much for the question, and I think you've already at least partially answered your question. I mean, no, really, I totally agree. I have to admit that, of course, what I have given is only a short glimpse into the actor networks that are surrounding those large-scale projects, and you could add probably a lot of others. And also, of course, when looking at different projects, the map would look differently. But I agree that at least for some of the initial stages of those larger projects, it has been very much driven really by external expertise. But already very briefly afterwards, you would also see that in most of the cities, there were, of course, debates going on, both within, the civil society, but also within city governments. And I think it's not that straightforward, as I may have evoked this image. And when looking at the NCICD, of course, there have been a lot of changes also. And so I think cities are already on a good way, and there are negotiation processes going on that could then lead to higher levels of participation. But I would also like to stress that what Martin just presented could also, of course, be a way of scrutinizing some of those projects that are proposed to cities. So we already have a fairly good idea how to assess such proposals and to show whether they are sustainable and inclusive or not. So I think the instruments are there; they have to be applied.
Thank you. That's quite clear, I think, what you're trying to address there. The next question, this question is to Martin. Martin, in your research and based on your research and in your perspective, how do you see the role and strategy of development bank in implementing urban sustainability? What is your take on that?
Yes, thank you for the question. We think that development banks, of course, have a very important role in advancing projects and technologies which are very much necessary, but not always backed by a strong business case. So any trailblazing on doing adaptation, resilience building work, the establishing of not well established technologies and infrastructure building that is mostly aimed to benefit a broad range of constituents is something that development banks in our eyes should pursue. And what I want to say is that on top of this, on top of the problem that the right things need to be built, we think that the voice of the affected people on the ground, of the constituents in the local areas are much less heard, because there's a divide between what's been fed from the bottom up into the project pipelines of development banks and what is needed on the ground. So we think that it's very important that going forward, civil society and capacity needs to be strengthened to overcome this gap of developing project ideas, proposals, and feeding them into a process where they can be recognized. So we think that small-scale resilience building and very focused projects need to be recognized as something that's very much worth of financing. And we, for example, argue that larger banks like the AIIB should implement something like a dedicated financing line just for these kinds of projects. But we do realize that developing this is not something that can be done easily. So there's a gap between proposal, financing, development of project, and then in the end, financing it. So there's a lot of work to be done. But I think there's some good questions asked here, and some good ideas to answer these questions. But it's a lot of work still cut out for us going forward. Thank you.
Yes, in my experience, Martin, there's quite difficult to move the business case and come up with that solid business case. And before you know it, as you implement it in some of the countries, you get into a situation where cost overruns become the main feature, if you wish. And on top of that, you have to put sustainability measures which add to the complexity of the business case of each of the projects. And I think this is a challenge. And do you see this consistently visible in some of your research?
Well, yes, definitely. And for example, when we speak about the AIIB, which is a large multilateral bank, it has a different mode of working than national banks or even subnational banks. But we realize that especially the urban field is much neglected, and large-scale infrastructure is often something that finds financing. In large, really, billions of dollars are being invested into some large-scale modal transport, for example. Yes. This, of course, is something that is much wished for and necessary in mega cities and large cities. But on the other side, smaller and more dedicated to the needs of people on the ground projects are rarely to be seen because there's sometimes not even a business case. It's not that there's a weak business case, but there is no business case for this. And it's yet much needed infrastructure that needs to be built. And we think that development banks need to be much more at the forefront of this. And hopefully this can be backed by a strong civil society voice. And we try to bring those into the fold and try to, in our case, approach AIIB with the needs and have them expressed by the constituents on the ground.
Very well. Thank you, Martin. Let me just now invite a question from the floor, if any. Just one question. Please, your name and institution. Let me just give you.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Bernie. Probably this question is for Mr. Mitra, but perhaps Mr. Voss and also Mr. Herbeck could also give a response. I would like to share from one contradictory perspective. What is your view regarding the how the economic solution for the rural areas to preserve their circularity and the ecological perspective? Since in our context, in Indonesian context, there are too many opportunities if the villages or the rural areas transforming into an urbanized area. Too many economic opportunities there. Leaving all the ecological things from the villages. If we look at the Indonesian context, so many examples on how the urbanization or the transformation from the rural to urban offers many economic growth and all the municipalities' revenue and so on. For example, we can look at the examples in Jakarta greater areas such as Cilengsi, how they transform into the urbanized new cities, and then how we look at Soreang in southern part of Bandung, how they transform into a new townships there. And we can also look at how Subang today transforming into the urbanized area and transform into a new city. So what is your view regarding how we could preserve all the circularities in the rural areas, and then all the ecological perspective, how they could, how we can make all the villages and rural areas growth in terms of economic if they have to preserve all the development. Thank you, Pak Bernie. That's all from my side.
Thank you. So I guess this question goes to all of the speakers. Short, urbanization and keeping the circularity of rural areas. How do you see that, and what do you think needs to be done in that front? Can I start with Dr. With probably Herbeck. Herbeck first. Dr. Herbeck?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure whether I'm the right person to answer this question. Maybe I can express a certain unease with this separation as well, with urban and the urban and the rural, because I mean, you rightly said that of course there are developments that point in other directions, also that rural areas do share similarities to the urban places, be it in the way how people communicate, the infrastructure developments around there, and so on. So I'm not sure whether it's that straightforward to really say the rural areas, and for example, when you look at Germany, the heavy industrialized agriculture in rural areas is nothing that is really worthwhile to preserve, also when it comes to ecological footprints or impact. So I think it's more a general question how to really fundamentally transform some of the ways people or economies work, both in rural and urban areas. So that would be maybe a first question, and others are very much invited to supplement what I just said.
Thank you. Thank you. So maybe Dr. Mitra, if you can share with us your view on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think this is also an important question to discuss. And as you rightly mentioned, that if rural area transform to urban, that can bring lot of economic opportunity that can contribute to the economy, and various type of opportunities can bring for the people. But on the other hand, if you see that the urban area day by day become less livable, and I think moderator also rightly mentioned in his speech and statement that it is important to measure the livability of the urban area. So this is, we should not just consider the economic development, need to have kind of composite index actually to decide that what kind of development we want to see in the future. And one thing, the circularity of rural economy, personally, I feel that there is a lot of opportunity of the circular economy based on the ecosystem in the rural area. And one example I shared with you that Kanagawa Prefecture Water Environment Conservation Program, it is kind of circularity of the economy between the urban and rural area for management of the ecosystem in the rural area. And that actually promote strengthen the economic activity in the rural area and contribute to the rural economy and create the job. The thing is that we should not just focus on the economic development, but we need to integrate environmental issues there. And my opinion is that we need to develop circular economy based on the ecosystem services that we receive from the rural area. That can actually contribute to the net zero, contribute to food security, contribute to the energy security and water security. So that's my response to your question. But this is because of short time, I could not explain, but please contact me for further discussion about this.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. So, distinguished
Can I share
participants?
something, Prof?
Oh, Prof. Junita,
Just wait a minute.
would you like to? Yes,
To share?
please,
Yeah.
please.
Just 1 minute?
Please,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. For the questions, I work with the farmers. I lived with farmers for how many years? And I argue that they love to be farmers. They like to be farmers. So if they go to the village, they have to change their job, their profession. So I don't think that once they are farmers, all of them will go out of the village to go to the town, even though there's a tendency that rural becomes the urban life. You cannot avoid that the modernity, the technology is, but the rural lives will still consist of food production, but the urban life is more on services. But then during the pandemic, some of the urban people also try to do the urban farming. But the circularity, once you teach the farmers, once you educate them that please don't burn the waste of the rice straw, please use it again as the compost. And once you train them how to make the compost, they will preserve it. So this is a kind of circularity also, so economic circularity, and it depends on the ecosystem. I agree with Dr. Mitra that the important thing is to also share our knowledge, share our expertise, to make them understand what is the negative impacts of linear economic, and what is the advances of economic circularity. That's my arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. So we are coming to the end of our session. I would like to thank the presenter for this afternoon, Prof. Junita, Dr. Herbeck, Martin Vos, and Dr. Mitra for their time and their presentation. All the materials, I suppose, will be available from the organizing committee. We will take into account all the materials in this discussion. The convenience of this event will be have been taking notes throughout the program, and we will make sure that this will be assembled into our recommendation to Sherpas and co-chairs. With that, I think I would like to thank honorable and participants for participating in these discussions, and I would like to return the floor to our chairman of this event, Pak Andi. Pak Andi, please. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, please give a warm applause once again to Bapak Bernardus Jonoputro for completing his task as the moderator for the panel discussion. And thank you also to all the 4 speakers who have been participated and share their research and also their experiences. Baik, terima kasih Bapak Bernardus Jonoputro. Kami persilahkan untuk dapat turun dari panggung. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, sebelum kita beranjak ke acara selanjutnya, terlebih dahulu saya ingin menginformasikan dan mengingatkan kembali bagi Bapak dan Ibu yang belum mendapatkan link untuk mengisi data bagi nantinya akan diberikan e-certificate, mungkin bisa ditampilkan di layar linknya, diingatkan kembali kepada para peserta terutama yang hadir di sini, kemudian juga yang online bisa dibantu oleh panitia untuk ditampilkan linknya. Ya, jadi silakan untuk dapat mengisi daftar hadir terlebih dahulu, ini bisa diakses melalui telepon genggam Bapak dan Ibu. Kemudian nanti sertifikatnya juga sudah ada linknya, boleh difoto saja. Jadi nanti setelah selesai acara ini bisa langsung mengakses link tersebut atau tautan tersebut dan Bapak dan Ibu nanti juga bisa mendapatkan e-sertifikatnya ya. Materi yang tadi juga sudah diberikan, jikalau tadi juga tidak sempat mencatat poin-poin pentingnya juga bisa diakses melalui tautan yang berada di layar. Jadi silakan difoto saja terlebih dahulu ya Bapak dan Ibu. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, kita telah sampai di penghujung acara. Untuk itu selanjutnya kita akan simak bersama penyampaian kata-kata penutupan yang akan disampaikan oleh Presiden Ikatan Ahli Perencanaan Indonesia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that was the panel discussion led by Mr. Benadus Jono Putro. And now we will witness the closing speech which will be presented by the President of Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners. To Bapak Andi Simarmata, would you please once again I'll invite you to the stage.
Okay, thank you very much. And all the speakers in the Zoom platform, Johannes, Bijon, Martin, and Prof. Yunita. I'm very much enjoying, although we need more question and we need more discussion, yeah. But at least for us as organization, those presentation and conversation among you has enlightened us in several points. Yeah, that perhaps the first one, I think we need to build the circularity mindset. Yeah, not only for the city but also how urban-rural linkage can be a platform to show or to demonstrate the importance of the circularity. The second one, I think the alert, yeah, or even early warning alert from Prof. Yunita, the farmers need to be strengthened, need to be increased the knowledge that shown by the wheel. In Indonesia, wheel, Johannes, Martin, and Bijon is something that not appropriate, yeah. But it means we need to build school. Yeah? We need to build field school for the farmers, that then farmers can increase their knowledge based on the practices. So we need to avoid commodification, yeah, to commoditize every farming issues or even the profession of farmers. West Java province has shown big interest in the making the millennial generation as prosperous farmers. And I think in the beginning, Regional Secretary of West Java Province has mentioned that, and I think the Governor Ridwan Kamil has also done several projects on the millennial farmers. And I think it will be a good for the urban-rural linkage integration, yeah? So then we can reduce the urban migration, but at the same time, rural people can also be welfare. And don't forget also to optimize, yeah, the digital acceleration. Yeah? Due to COVID-19, we have witnesses, yeah? So many new type of economic, new social practices and behaviors from the rural and also urban people. We again, urban and rural need to optimize the usage of the digital acceleration. And I think that I can also note from Martin's points, urban voices, yeah, to the financial institution, whether international bank, multilateral development bank, or even also the government state, the central government, should be also informed about the importance of the sustainability and also the climate risk. Yeah? So then, if all stakeholders can work at the same vision, at the same platform, then I think we can do some more practicality and some pilot projects to accelerate and also to replicate what we call the urban-rural linkage. And I think this is also the voices that I think urban diplomacy should take more concrete steps to the G20 meeting. So I would also like to invite beyond Martin, Johannes, and Prof. Yunita, because the next step after this workshop, as mentioned by U20 Sherpa in the opening, we will have a meeting by June 10. So it's next Friday. So IAP and the West Java province will have a discussion on Monday and Tuesday. So if you have time, or if you are available and have time, we would like to invite you to, let's say, make one-page conclusion from this seminar. Yeah? So we will contact you in private then. So thank you very much, and see you again soon. For West Java government, West Java provincial government, again, thank you for hosting and facilitating the discussion. Pak Bernardus Jonoputro, as also the advisory to Governor of West Java, thank you, Pak, for making the conversation among the prominent scholars on this issue will become more fluent. And everyone in the Zoom and also in this hotel room, thank you for your participation. We apologize not all of you can have time to share your thoughts, but after this break, you can also discuss with us and show your interest and show your issues with us. So on behalf of the West Java government, West Java provincial government, and also the IAP, we like to say thank you again, and also for our MC, thank you so much, and also the crew here in making this Zoom fluently, yeah. And for the Cities Lab, a backbone, event organizer for this. Again, thank you and see you again soon, and have a nice weekend to all of us. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Nice to see you.
Terima kasih. Selamat tinggal.
Terima kasih. Bye-bye.
Sampai jumpa.
Ya, baik Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang kami hormati, dengan tadi disampaikan kata-kata penutupan, maka berakhirlah sudah keseluruhan rangkaian acara kita dari siang hari tadi menjelang sore hari ini. Dan tentunya sekali lagi kami mengaturkan ucapan terima kasih kepada seluruh tamu undangan khusus yang telah hadir. Terima kasih juga kepada para pembicara, terima kasih kepada moderator, dan tentunya juga terima kasih kepada seluruh panitia dan seluruh partisipan baik yang hadir secara daring maupun secara luring yang telah mengikuti keseluruhan rangkaian acara ini, dan semoga acara ini juga dapat mendatangkan manfaat bagi kita semua. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the event. Thank you very much once again to all the honorable guests, the speakers, the moderators, and all the participants who have joined us today, whether offline and online, and also thank you to the steering committee and the committee itself. Saya Agi Rahmawati selaku pembawa acara pamit undur diri. Mohon maaf apabila ada perbuatan atau perkataan yang kurang berkenan. I'll be signing off right now. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, good afternoon, and have a good weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye.
Selamat sore, bye-bye. Nice to see you all.
Selamat sore.
Recording stopped.